Have you ever wondered why Draco Malfoy hated Harry Potter so much? What if his hatred wasn't just petty jealousy, but something much deeper? In today's video, you'll discover the real reasons behind their legendary rivalry. Throughout the entire series, Harry Potter is portrayed as the ultimate hero. That makes sense. After all, the early books were meant for children, and a complex, morally ambiguous protagonist wouldn't have fit the tone. Draco, on the other hand, became the perfect antagonist. Arrogant, cruel, and cowardly, he seemed to exist purely to make Harry's life miserable. Tom Felton's brilliant performance only solidified this image, but was Draco really just a spoiled bully? Or was there more to his animosity toward Harry? The truth is, Draco had every reason to resent him, a childhood shaped by bloodlines. To understand Draco's hatred, we need to look at where he came from. He was the only son of Lucius Malfoy, a wealthy, pure-blood wizard who once served Lord Voldemort. His mother, Narcissa Black, came from an equally prestigious magical family. From childhood, Draco was taught that he was special, superior to Muggle-borns and those with lesser heritage. With no siblings to challenge him and parents who reinforced his pride, Draco grew up believing he was destined for greatness. By the time he arrived at Hogwarts, he was already entitled, arrogant, and used to getting his way. But was that enough to make him despise Harry Potter? Probably not. After all, Draco had his own circle of friends. His true resentment came from something far more personal. The first betrayal. Before he even set foot in Hogwarts, Draco had already heard of the boy who lived. His parents speculated that Harry would grow up to be an even greater dark wizard than Voldemort himself. They were eager to see what kind of ally or rival he might become. Draco's first encounter with Harry was in Diagon Alley. Not knowing who he was speaking to, he treated him politely, even trying to befriend him later on the Hogwarts Express. He reached out first, offering his hand and an alliance. Harry's response? Public rejection. It wasn't just a refusal, it was a humiliation. Harry chose Ron Weasley over him, laughed at Draco's words, and made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with the Malfoys. For Draco, who had been raised to believe in status and legacy, this was a crushing blow. It was the beginning of their rivalry and a wound that never quite healed.
A lifetime of unfairness.
As if the rejection wasn't enough, Hogwarts quickly became a nightmare for Draco in one particular way. No matter what he did, Harry always stole the spotlight. Draco was smarter, more disciplined, and more skilled in many areas. Yet despite his efforts, Harry always received praise, attention, and admiration. Not because he worked harder, but because he was famous. Professors, except for Snape, favored Harry. Students idolized him. Even when Draco outperformed him in academics or Quidditch, it never seemed to matter. For a boy raised to believe in prestige and superiority, this was unbearable. The frustration built up, feeding into his resentment.
A life defined by expectation.
Unlike Harry, who had the freedom to choose his own path, Draco was bound by family expectations. He didn't just dislike Harry, he feared him. Because if Harry won, that meant the Malfoy legacy was crumbling. His father expected him to uphold their bloodline's reputation. His mother pressured him to be the perfect son. His entire world revolved around pleasing his family and living up to their ideals. So when Voldemort returned, Draco wasn't just fighting for his own beliefs, he was fighting to survive. Unlike Harry, he never had the choice to be a hero, the redemption that almost was. For all his cruelty, Draco wasn't heartless. Despite years of rivalry, he hesitated when given the chance to expose Harry to Bellatrix Lestrange. He wasn't as ruthless as his father had wanted him to be, and in the end, he rejected Voldemort's cause entirely. I'm not saying Draco was secretly a good person or that Harry was the villain, but if you take a step back, it's clear Draco had plenty of reasons to hate Harry, and in his position, many others would have felt the same. Have you ever considered what might have happened if Draco and Harry had become friends? What if one small moment had gone differently, changing the course of their entire relationship? In today's video, we'll explore the moments that could have rewritten history and given Draco a different fate. Draco's resentment toward Harry wasn't just about school rivalry. It wasn't just about Slytherin versus Gryffindor. It ran much deeper, shaped by family, expectations, and an overwhelming fear of failure. When he first met Harry, he saw someone who could have been an ally, a powerful name, a legend in the making. But when Harry rejected him, it wasn't just a personal slight, it was a challenge to everything Draco believed in. He had been raised to think that blood status and family legacy were the most important things in the world. And here was Harry, famous beyond measure, choosing to side with a poor Weasley instead of the heir of one of the most powerful pure-blood families. That moment in the Hogwarts Express defined their relationship for years to come. Draco never forgave Harry for making him look like a fool. From that day forward, every interaction between them was charged with bitterness. He mocked him, taunted him, and did everything in his power to prove that Harry had made the wrong choice. But was it really just about revenge, or was there something else? Draco wasn't stupid. He knew that Harry was talented, but he also knew that Harry's fame wasn't entirely earned. The boy who lived was just lucky. Surviving Voldemort's attack as a baby wasn't an achievement, it was an accident. And yet Harry was constantly celebrated, constantly admired, constantly lifted up as a hero, while Draco, who worked harder, who came from a family of true power, was seen as the villain. It wasn't fair. And that feeling of injustice only grew stronger over the years.
Imagine growing up in a home where power was everything, where your father demanded perfection and where failure wasn't an option. Imagine carrying that weight on your shoulders every single day, knowing that the name Malfoy had to mean something. Then imagine stepping into Hogwarts and watching a boy who barely studied, who broke every rule, who didn't even care about his own fame, surpass you at every turn.
No matter how well Draco performed, he could never compete with the legend of Harry Potter. He wasn't the chosen one. He wasn't the one Dumbledore protected. He wasn't the one everyone whispered about in the halls. That kind of resentment doesn't fade, it festers. But what if things had gone differently? What if Harry had taken Draco's hand on the train? Would they have become friends? Would Draco have questioned his father's beliefs sooner? It's hard to say. Because at the end of the day, Draco wasn't just another Hogwarts student. He wasn't just a school bully. He was raised to be a warrior for a cause he never truly believed in. When Voldemort returned, Draco was still a child. But that didn't matter. His father had failed, and now it was his turn to prove his worth. The Dark Lord gave him an impossible mission, to kill Albus Dumbledore, not because he believed Draco could do it, but because he wanted to punish the Malfoys for their weakness. This was the moment when Draco's hatred for Harry stopped being about school rivalry. While Harry was off learning about Horcruxes, preparing to fight for the world, Draco was trapped. His life wasn't his own anymore. Every second was spent under the shadow of Voldemort, and every failure brought his family closer to ruin. He wasn't a villain anymore. He was a prisoner. The boy who had once strutted through Hogwarts, mocking Harry at every opportunity, was now barely keeping himself together. He lost weight. He lost sleep. He spent every waking moment trying to find a way to complete his task without destroying himself in the process. But no matter how much he hated Harry, he never wanted to be a murderer. When the time came to kill Dumbledore, Draco hesitated. He had every reason to pull the trigger. His family's lives were at stake. His own future was in danger. He had been raised to be ruthless, to do what had to be done for the sake of power.
And yet he couldn't do it.
This was the moment that defined Draco Malfoy more than any other. All the cruelty, all the arrogance, all the hatred, it all meant nothing in the end. Because when it truly mattered, when he was given the chance to prove that he was the person he had always pretended to be, he failed. But was it really failure? Or was it the first real sign that Draco had never been the person he had tried so hard to become? He wasn't his father. He wasn't a killer. He was just a scared boy who had been taught all the wrong lessons. And maybe that's why, when the war was at its peak, he hesitated once again. When Harry was captured and brought to Malfoy Manor, Draco had another chance. He could have identified him immediately. He could have proven his loyalty to Voldemort. But he didn't. He looked at Harry, the boy he had spent years despising, and he hesitated, just like before. Because at some point, Draco had realized that Harry wasn't his enemy. The real enemy was the life he had been forced into. The expectations, the fear, the pressure to be something he never truly was. By the time the war ended, Draco had lost everything. His family was disgraced. His father's influence was gone. The world he had been raised to believe in no longer existed. But he had survived, and survival meant something. Draco didn't become a hero. He didn't redeem himself with some grand sacrifice, but he walked away. He let go of the future his father had carved out for him. Years later, when he sent his own son to Hogwarts, he didn't fill his head with stories of blood purity and family superiority. He let him make his own choices. And maybe that was the greatest victory Draco Malfoy ever had. I'm not saying Draco was a misunderstood saint. He did terrible things, he made bad choices. But he was never truly evil. He was never beyond saving. In another life, in another story, he and Harry might have stood on the same side. But fate had other plans. Still, when it mattered most, Draco didn't take the final step into darkness. And maybe that